go straight to the agenda of the day. So after my talk, inshallah, we have an opening prayer stroke welcome speech by the chairman. And after that, the Quran recitation is going to follow. So to start, permit me to introduce Dr. Kotun. So Dr. Kotun, who is the chairman of the occasion? Dr. Kotun is the MD stroke CEO of Life Bridge Clinic in Lekki, Lagos State. He is a medical practitioner with over 10 years of practice, specializing in family medicine and occupational medicine, with certificate courses in emergency medicine. He had his Bachelor of Medicine and Bachelor of Surgery at the Lagos State College of Medicine, his diploma certificate in occupational medicine at Royal Society of Public Health, UK, and also masters in IAS in view, a master's in healthcare economics. Dr. Kotun talks about politics and play chess to relax, if not engage in medical activities. He is a lover of history and very passionate about his place of origin, Lagos State, and also his religion, Islam. Dr. Several health education and medical outreach services, say no to abuse substances, education a priority and not a privilege. So I welcome Dr. Kotun to the occasion today. Inshallah, is the chairman is going to give his welcome speech and opening prayer. Dr. Kotun, over to you. Hello, Dr. Kotun. Hello, Dr. Kotun. Dr. Kotun, your speech and opening prayer.
Can you hear me?
Now, yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry, it's like the network is just fluctuating. So, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hello? Ah, God.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Hello, we can hear you.
Okay. In the name of Allah, the creation of heaven and earth, we give thanks to him for sparing our lives till this very moment. We pray to live long in good health and continue to be in the noble path of Islam. We commit all our deliberations unto his hands.
Yes, we
Hello?
can hear you.
Hello? Hey.
Well, your network is fluctuating.
I can
Can
hear
you
you.
Go
Can
ahead,
you
Dr.
hear me?
Kotun. We can hear you. Go ahead,
Can
sir.
you? Okay. We commit all our deliberations unto the hands of our Maker. May it be a fruitful one. May it be counted for us in this world and in the hereafter. It is indeed a honor and great privilege to chair this very lecture, which has been in series jointly organized by the Medical and Engineering Muslim and Alumni Association of LASU. May Allah be pleased with all those that have sacrificed time and resources in putting this together. I'm convinced that our invited erudite professor and Islamic scholar will do justice to the topic. The topic, Islam between laxity and extremism, will surely address many issues and also answered lots of unanswered questions among many Muslims. There are several verses of the Holy Quran and the hadith of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, that support Islam as a simple way of life, and also Allah re-emphasizing it to us, that it will not place burdens that will be unbearable to us, thus making me to make reference to some instances of extremism seen among some of our brothers and sisters. Example, fasting the whole of the year, celibacy, observing tahajjud for the whole night, declaring a Muslim a kafiri without knowledge of his or her activities, and so many others. Some of the observed laxities are a conscious Muslim that has abandoned calling people to the right thing and refraining them from evil deeds. Another one is a Muslim scholar that is constantly missing congregational prayers without any tangible reason. Both extremism and laxities are things we as Muslims should endeavor to avoid. Thank you and God bless. Handing over to the invited guest, who I know will do better justice to this very topic. Jazakumullah khairan. Hello.
Wa iyyakum. Wa iyyakum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Jazakumullah
assalam.
khairan. Chairman, thank you for this speech. While the chairman is making, hello, chairman was delivering his speech.
Okay. I think we cannot hear Dr. Masood very well. I'll just
from the Quran.
Okay.
Which is going to be done by Ustaz Qasim Adeni. Ustaz.
Naam, assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سيقول السفهاء من الناس ما ولاهم عن قبلتهم التي كانوا عليها قل لله المشرق والمغرب يهدي من يشاء إلى صراط مستقيم وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا وما جعلنا القبلة التي كنت عليها إلا لنعلم من يتبع الرسول ممن ينقلب على عقبيه وإن كانت لكبيرة إلا على الذين هدى الله وما كان الله ليضيع إيمانكم إن الله بالناس لرؤوف رحيم. اللهم ارحمنا بالقرآن. Now the translation. Allah says, the foolish amongst the people will say, what has turned them away from their Qibla which they used to face. Say, to Allah belongs the east and the west. He guides whom he wills to a straight path. And thus we have made you a just community, that you will be witnesses over the people, and the messenger will be a witness over you. And we did not make the Qibla which you used to face, except that we might make evidence who would follow the messenger from who would turn back on his heels. And indeed, it is difficult except for those whom Allah has guided. And never would Allah have caused you to lose your faith. Indeed, Allah is to the people kind and merciful. Assalamu alaikum wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khairan. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. So we are moving to the next agenda on the line. So, but before then, permit me to welcome on board to recognize the last mega president and also the Muslim medical doctors from LASUCO.
Dr. Osman.
Hello?
Okay. Hello.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Hello. Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Proceed, sir. You can proceed, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Can we hear me?
Yes, please. Doctor, we can hear you. Hello, can you? Hello, Doctor Ajala, can you hear us? Hello.
Hello.
I think so. It looks like I'm sorry. It looks like Dr. Moshood is having some. It looks like Dr. Moshood is having some network issues while he's going on. To...
So the next program on the agenda is the lecture by
Okay. Dr. Osman Saka, please, can you?
Okay. Yes. So I think our moderator is having some problems with the network, and so I'll just step in for the meantime while he sorts himself out. So we'll go on to the next aspect of the lecture, and we have Sheikh Abdrazak Alaru, who is the just 1 second. So Professor Abdrazak Abnuri Dalaru is the head of Department of Islamic Law at the University of Ilorin in Nigeria. He joined the service of the university in 2008 and obtained he obtained his Islamic law degree in 1983 from the Islamic University in Medina with first-class honors and as best graduate. He had his master's MA in the jurisprudence of religion in 1997 with distinction, and LLM, that's Masters of Law in Comparative Jurisprudence with distinction and recommendation for publication, and he had his PhD in 2002. Professor Laro had, to his credit, not less than 7 to 8 books published and several academic research papers and journals. He's a member of the Financial Regulatory Advisory Council of Experts, Central Bank of Nigeria, and a Takaful Advisory Council member of the National Insurance Commission. I would want to invite our Sheikh, Dr. Abdrazak Alaro, to have the floor. Sheikh, can you unmute your mic. You have the floor, and you'll be speaking to us for the next 40 minutes. Assalamu alaikum.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله صلوات ربي وسلامه عليه أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters, members of today's audience, I say unto you all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum
Salam,
assalam.
salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
I am happy to be here this morning in the midst of a very special class of Muslims. I understand majority of my audience this morning are either engineers, Muslim engineers, or Muslim medical doctors. This is a blessing from Almighty Allah on you, and with every blessing comes the responsibility of being leaders in certain respects of this Muslim community. And I want to believe that what you are doing this morning could be seen from that perspective of your trying to discharge your duties, not just your professional duties as medical doctors or as engineers, but first and foremost as Muslims, as members of the Nigerian Muslim community, who have enormous responsibility in letting the people know what they owe as duties to their Creator, Almighty Allah. And that is why I accepted the invitation. And I'm saying once again, I'm happy to be in your midst this morning. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make whatever we are going to say into this discussion to be beneficial to all of us, not only in this life, but even in the hereafter. Amen. The topic of our discussion this morning is Islam between laxity and extremism. By using the preposition between, it shows clearly that we want to see Islam as something that must not be swayed or diverted to any of these two extreme ends. Islam must always be in the balance between being lax and between being extremist in the practice of this religion. That is the true position of Islam. Islam never approves of extremism, as it does not always approve of laxity as well. So to be a good Muslim, you must always maintain this equilibrium of not being extremist, but at the same time, not being negligent or careless or lax in your approach, in your attitudes, in the matters affecting your faith and affecting your religion. Excuse me, it's okay, it's okay. Sorry. First and foremost, we must agree that these two issues, extremism and laxity, they are natural phenomena. They are common with followers of any religion. They are common. It's a common thing to see. In fact, wherever you have something like a law, whether it is a religious law or even a secular law, and people are expected to abide by those laws, there is high tendency that you will have three groups of people. Those who will go very far. I am using the word very far here as different from going too far. Going too far is not the same as going very far. And that is part of what we want to discuss this morning. Because sometimes we mix up between these two meanings. Going very far in your obedience to the dictates of your religion, and going too far. Going too far is what we refer to as being extremism. Now you have some people that will go too far, and you will have some people that will go too less, not even going to the normal or the minimum standard of being an obedient or a law-abiding human being from any perspective, like I said, whether it is a religious law or even a secular law. Then in between these two, you will have a group of people that will maintain moderateness. They will be moderate in their adherence to the rules and the teachings of whether the law of religion or even any other law. And that is why when we read Al-Quran Al-Kareem, to understand that this is not something that is not common, if it is not, it's not seen as a common phenomenon, we wouldn't have had verses like قُلْ يَا أَهْلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا تَغْلُوا فِي دِينِكُمْ. That's an instruction from Almighty Allah, instructing people of the scripture, that is those people that were before us as Muslims. Allah warned them against extremism, going too far, even in your obedience, in your obedience to the laws of religion, in your adherence, in your following what is required of you as a follower of any religion. So it's a verse of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, Ya Ahl al-Kitabi la taghlu fi dinikum. Extremism can be found in almost every aspect of our life. You can be extremist in the way you dress. You can be extremist in the way you talk. You can be extremist in the way you think, in the way you, whatever you are doing, you may go too far, and you may go to a level that is not that's not up to the minimum standard. But here Al-Quran Al-Kareem is drawing our attention to a fact, because that may not be thinkable, that can one go too far even in obeying Almighty Allah? And this is the point. Even in your adherence to the law of religion, if care is not taken, you may take it too far. That is why Allah warned against that one by saying, La taghlu fi dinikum. During the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this is a practical example of how people can, even in their effort, in trying to make efforts to be law-abiding, to be good followers, to be good believers in Almighty Allah, there's tendency that they may take it too far. In the lifetime of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, somebody who, although accepted that he was a follower of Muhammad, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but even with that, had the temerity of standing before the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and asking the Prophet to fear Almighty Allah. Ya Muhammad, ittaqillah. That was a statement by an extremist follower of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his lifetime, by even having that audacity to even call the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to be fearful of Almighty Allah, meaning that he has seen himself at a level that is even higher than that of the Prophet in following the laws of religion, that incidentally those laws were in the first place delivered to us, brought to us through the same man, the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. that is on the part of being extremist, taking your adherence to the law of religion too far. What about the other side, being lax? Is also very common in even among ourselves in our day-to-day language. We will describe some Muslims, they are Muslim, but we will say they are nominal Muslims. What do we mean by nominal Muslims? Means they are just Muslims by name, not putting into practice that religion of Islam that they claim to follow. So it's a natural, is a common phenomenon to have extremism and to have laxity in any society. Now, the question I should ask myself and you should ask yourself is that which of these two is acceptable to Almighty Allah? Is it extremism and is it laxity? And the answer to that question is none of the two is acceptable to Allah. None. None of the two, neither extremism nor laxity. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually expects from me, what he wants from us, is to maintain that balance between extremism and laxity. And that is why happily a verse of Al-Quran Al-Kareem was recited unto us all at the start of today's program, wherein Almighty Allah said, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Allah is describing us, Muslims, followers of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we have deliberately made you to be a moderate people that will maintain the balance between extremism and laxity. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. Muslims, the religion of Islam is that religion that maintains the balance even among when we compare Islam to other religions that we hear of. At least we know of Christianity as another form of religion. Some of us might have also heard of Judaism or Yahudiya as another form of religion. When you look at Islam and Muslims, as Almighty Allah has described us in this verse, جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا, you will see that one practically embedded in the laws of Islam itself. For example, let's take what we believe in with respect to the prophets and messengers of Allah. Prophets and messengers of Allah, what is our belief in them? Then how do we take them as Muslims compared to how they are treated by followers of these two other religions? So as to see it clearly, what Allah is saying in this verse, جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. That is what is acceptable to Almighty Allah. For instance, in Judaism, many verses of Al-Quran Al-Kareem mentioned what the Jews, what their atrocity with their prophets, the prophet and messengers of Allah sent to them, the criminality that they perpetrated to the point of even killing some of those prophets and messengers is in the Al-Quran Al-Kareem. وَيَقْتُلُونَ النَّبِيِّينَ بِغَيْرِ الْحَقِّ. So they treated their prophets and messengers with contempt and even with criminality to the point of even killing some of them. Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, in the eyes of Jews, in the belief of Jews, they believe that Jesus, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, wal'iyadu billah, is even a legitimate child. That is their belief. So this is how they treat the prophet and messengers of Allah. On the other side of it, that is laxity. On the other side of it, we have another set of religion in Christianity, taking some of the prophets, some of the messengers of Allah as even God, as even a God. Yes, we call in Masihu, in a verse of Al-Quran Al-Kareem, Allah informs us of how the followers of Christianity, the Christians, they even believe Al-Masih to be the God. In another verse, called إِنَّمَا الْمَسِيحُ ibn Allah. In another verse of Al-Quran Al-Karim, قالت اليهود عزير بن الله وقالت النصارى المسيح ابن الله. So in a particular religion, Prophet Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is believed to even be a legitimate child. And in another one, another extreme belief, he was even taken to be God himself or a son of God. Now Islam comes as the balance that Almighty Allah wants between these two extreme ends. We believe in the prophets and the messengers of Almighty Allah as they were, the prophets and messengers of Almighty Allah. They were neither gods or children of God. But at the same time, we do not treat them with contempt or disrespect. We treat them with utmost respect, but at the same time, we do not worship them or believe that they are children of God. So this is an example of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in this particular verse, that you Muslims, and you must always behave in that way, behaving in a way that you will always be between laxity and extremism. Let me give one more example to see how Allah designed this religion of Islam as a moderate religion between two extreme ends. Let's take a practical aspect of religion, the issue of marriage and divorce, as something that also is a common phenomenon in the lives of human beings. In the religion of Judaism, you can, as a man, you can continue to divorce your wife without any limited number. There's no limited number of how many times you can divorce your wife. So you can marry today, divorce tomorrow, recall her after tomorrow, and divorce her again. And so in an endless way. So you can just divorce, marry, divorce, marry, divorce. That's the way. In another form, when you look at what is in the Christianity, is that when you have married, nothing should separate you, for better and for worse. This is not in line with the nature of human beings. You may discover that after a month or a year, the two of you are actually non-compatible. You cannot continue with this marriage. Now, the religion is telling you that once you are together, nothing can separate you. Another one is allowing you, without any limit, to continue to marry and divorce. Now, Islam comes as the moderate way, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defined and described us in that particular verse. What do we have in our law as Muslims? Is that, look, if it becomes unbearable for the two of you to continue living as husbands and wives, then there is a way out for you. You can divorce after marriage. It is legal, it is halal. But that should not be at the expense of the dignity of women. You cannot continue to divorce women without any limitation. And that is why we have in Islam what we call a revocable divorce. You will be given some chances, first time, second time, then the divorce itself become irrevocable. So that is another way of showing us that Islam and Muslims, as described in this particular verse of Al-Quran Al-Karim, we should always maintain that balance. Allah does not want us to be either extreme or lax. He actually designed this religion of Islam for us to be the moderate between laxity, or to be the balance between laxity and extremism. Now, if we have known this fact, that this is the religion that we claim to follow, is a religion of moderateness between what is extreme and what is lax, then it has the big challenge now is to identify what is the benchmark. How do we know what is extreme? What has been taken too far and what is inadequate? Because that is the real challenge that I want us to address. Because to some people today, even practicing some aspect of religion of Islam, that practice itself for whoever is unable or is unwilling to do will be seen as extremism. A good example of that one will be for a Muslim lady that does not use hijab, that usually goes out with his head uncovered. Such a woman or such a lady will perhaps mistakenly taking those who normally abide by the law of Islam or covering their heads whenever they are outside. She may take that one to be a form of extremism. And they will, some of them will even say it publicly that those are the extremists. Why? Because they keep to the law of Islam that says a Muslim woman cannot go out with her head uncovered. So we need to know the standard, the benchmark for knowing what is beyond the limit and what is not up to the limit, because that's another way of defining what is extreme and what is lax in terms of following the laws and the rules of Islam. Now, what is the acceptable benchmark? That one is not also far-fetched. We are talking of a religion sent down by Almighty Allah through a particular messenger. That is what Islam is. Islam is not what I think of. This is what should be. This is how it should be. Islam is a religion that has been the law of that religion, how it is going to be practiced, how it should be practiced. It has been revealed by Almighty Allah, not directly to me or to you. Allah has chosen to use a man, and that is the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through whom we can only know what pleases Almighty Allah. There's no any other way of knowing what is acceptable to Allah and what is not acceptable in terms of our adherence to the law, the rules of Islam. So we have an indisputable benchmark of knowing what is too far and what is inadequate. And that is just to know what is that Islam that was brought to us by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that was preached, that was taught by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and keeping to that religion is what will qualify you to be, as Allah describes us in Al-Quran Al-Karim, ja'alnakum ummatan wasato. There's no any other way to that one. Because as I said, this is a religion that comes from a particular channel. It comes from a particular messenger. It was revealed unto us through that messenger. So for us to know what exactly that religion is for us to, first of all, know what was initially brought to us. And whatever goes beyond that limit is extremism. But at the same time, whatever is not up to that limit is inadequate, is unacceptable. And that is my advice to all of us here today, and by extension to whoever may be privileged of listening to this lecture even after today, that it is not a matter that you or I can decide on our own. If that one is left to our individual judgment, somebody that is extreme will see what is even acceptable, some of what are acceptable in the religion of Islam to be laxity, because he has gone extreme. And at the same time, those of us who are suffering from laxity, like the example I gave you, a woman, a lady that is not using hijab, will believe that whoever is using hijab has gone too far. But the fact is that using hijab is part and parcel of what the Prophet ﷺ brought to us as a religion. So that remains the sacrosanct standard that we must not lose sight of. Anytime we are discussing what is extreme and what is lax, we first of all must know what is that standard that we are using to measure. And here, let me narrate unto you a story. It was around, it's almost 19 years ago now, in 2001, up till 2002, when America militarily invaded another country, Afghanistan in Asia. That is in the aftermath of 9/11 in America. After that military invasion, and America feeling that it has succeeded in our goal of changing the regime, the government of Afghanistan, that it accused of being behind what happened to America in 2001. The point I'm trying to make here is that America came out clearly to say its troops did not come to Afghanistan to remain there permanently. So it was ready to allow Muslim nations, the brother nations to Afghanistan, to come up with their own troops to take the position of the American troops. But the Americans did not want to leave another vacuum. That one can be justified. That one is understandable. That, okay, I'm leaving and I want you, you are their brothers and sisters, come on and occupy my position here. But at a point when some Muslim nations showed interest in supplying troops, then at a point, America started rejecting the offers of some nations. Why? Because the Americans believed that they do not want the form of Islam that is being practiced in those countries. In countries like Saudi Arabia, for example, because no, we don't want from in countries like some other countries, they rejected to have their troops to take their position in Afghanistan. While they said we were looking at, specifically they said countries like Turkey. They said why? Because that is the form of Islam that is moderate, that we want for the people of Afghanistan. And I remember vividly, I think it was Sudanese Foreign Affairs Minister that came out to say, and this is that America is unqualified to tell Muslims what is moderate and what is immoderate or what is extreme. Why? Because America, first of all, needs to know what is even Islam. It's only when you have known what is Islam, the real, not the kind of Islam that you are being told about in your media. What is Islam? And what is Islam is clear, is what was brought by the Prophet, by the Messenger of Allah, through whom Islam was sent to the mankind. So it's only when we have agreed on that standard brought by the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, oh, that we can now say, okay, you have gone beyond that limit, you are an extremist, or you have not gone up to that limit, you are lax in your obedience to the laws of Islam. That's just a practical example of this real challenge that we may be having in knowing what is extreme and what is immoderate and what is moderate. By the time we are saying we want to maintain that balance, which we must always maintain, the balance between extremism and laxity. So it is quite important for us to know, to recognize, and always to hold dearly that standard, that benchmark of what is Islam. It is only when we know what is Islam that is acceptable to Allah, then we can easily judge whoever is going beyond that limit to be an extremist, and whoever is not performing up to that limit to be a careless, a negligent, or a lax Muslim. This will take me to another point of my discussion. The Prophet ﷺ himself declared in an authentic hadith that I brought one form of Islam. It's only one form of Islam that was brought by the Prophet ﷺ. But he said, he prophesied, and it's going to happen, and it has been happening, that this one religion that I brought to you will start having branches, will start having versions, will start having models. That if you count those versions, those branches, those models in an authentic hadith narrated by Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu, that you will count up to 73 models, up to 73 ways, up to 73 branches of one single religion, just one form of Islam that was revealed to us through the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, may Almighty Allah continue to be pleased with them, radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. They did not leave us in darkness. When they heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam making this utterance, they asked a very important question. Could you please describe for us what is out of these 73 ways, which one will be acceptable to Allah, or we are free to choose any of those models and claim to be Muslims, whom Allah described as being ummatan wasato, a moderate group of people. Then an answer came from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam without mentioning his words. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من كان على مثل ما أنا عليه اليوم أنا وأصحابي. The meaning of that being, whoever is on what I and my companions, what we are on it in terms of our practices of Islam, al-yawma, today. That is the point, that is the word I want you to underline. Today. Which day? More than 1,400 years ago. He said it was that Islam that was practiced today, referring to that day when the Prophet ﷺ answered this question. So that is the only form of Islam that will be acceptable to Almighty Allah. And that is, let us face it, we all know this form of Islam today in any society. This is what is called a sunnah. When you hear people saying these people are following sunnah, what is sunnah? Sunnah means the style, the way, the method, the approach, the attitude of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam to issues. So I'm saying this because unless we don't want to get the true and the correct benchmark of knowing what is extremism and what is laxity, again, as I said, knowing that will first and foremost necessitate knowing what was the religion that was brought, that form of religion, which was only one. But according to the Prophet ﷺ himself, will become many ways, models that will count up to, you will count up to 73. Then will all these 73 still remain a balance between extremism and laxity? That was originally, and that was practiced by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I don't want to be misunderstood here. Am I saying that whoever is claiming to follow the sunnah can never be an extremist? The answer to that one is no. And that is why I've told you in the beginning, a follower of sunnah, of that one form of Islam during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, came publicly to challenge the Prophet to fear Allah. So he has gone too far when he believes that he was even at a level of iman, of faith, that was higher than that of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we are not saying that, oh, Professor Lara is saying once you are a member of Al-Sunnah, you are not an extremist. We have a lot of extremists today who claim to be followers of Sunnah, but something is wrong in their followership of Sunnah. This is what we should look into. And this is what I was going to suggest as part of the solutions to how people get into extremism and how people get into easily. It is to identify the benchmark of knowing who is an extremist and who is lax or negligent or careless. Let me buttress my points that we are never saying that if you are claiming to be a member of Ahlul Sunnah, a follower of Sunnah, you cannot be an extremist. Many of them are extremists. We can find extremists from any group of people. During the, I've told you that example, but in another hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet even described a group of people that will go too far, become extremists, by saying that تحقرون صلاتكم عند صلاتهم وصيامكم مع صيامهم, meaning that it's not even a sign of being free of this disease of extremism that you are pious, that you are religious. You may be pious, you may be religious, and yet you will fall a victim of extremism. That is why the Prophet ﷺ said, even some of those that will go too far become extremists. When you look at their salah, their prayer, compared to yours, you will see a clear difference, that they pray more, they pray better than you. The Prophet said, when you take their fasting, you will clearly, you can judge yourself that, oh, these people, they fast more, they fast in a better way than me, but yet they may become extremists. Why? because they have left that line, the dividing line that the Prophet ﷺ made clear enough for us, that this is the form of Islam that I brought, and this is the form of Islam that is acceptable to Almighty Allah. And that is why in that hadith of Anas radiyallahu anhu, قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم من كان على مثل ما أنا عليه اليوم, whoever is following the same pattern, the same method that I and my companions follow today. And we said today means on that day, which is today, more than 1,400 years ago. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I think with this one, we've laid, I believe we've laid a sufficient foundation for us to know what is extremism in Islam and what is laxity in Islam, and the true benchmark of differentiating, distinguishing between these two. And that is what we have said is the only form of Islam that is known today as As-Sunnah. So As-Sunnah, following the Sunnah of the Prophet, is not actually a sect of Islam. It is redirecting Muslims to the original Islam that was brought by the Prophet. But it shouldn't surprise us that why do we have so many models, so many ways that are not in keeping of the Sunnah? The Prophet had already said it. It's part of the wisdom of Almighty Allah that you will have even up to 73. So my advice for you and for myself is that before performing any act of religion, any act of ibadah, please make sure that you have what will tell us this was how it was practiced in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. You should shun innovation in religion. In medical field, in engineering, in your fields, it's good to be innovative, but it's very, very bad to be innovative in religion. Why? Because of this same reason. Because the Prophet said the only acceptable way of worshiping Allah is what was practiced more than 1,400 years ago. So inventions are not welcome when it comes to religion. Religion is what is in line with what was brought in those days, more than 1,400 years ago. So the act of innovating, inventing new ways of practicing Islam must be shunned completely if you want to maintain this quality of being ummatan wasato as described by Al-Quran Al-Karim. So now I think I can now move to a more practical aspect of my talk this morning. I would like to now cite examples for people to know, because you see, the reality is that a lot of people do not even know where they belong, whether they are being extremist or they are being lax. Like I told you, if I or anybody chooses not to do anything in religion, whoever is doing it will be seen as being extremist. And if I choose to do something that I believe is good to be done, but it is not in total keeping with the rules of how the Prophet ﷺ practiced on religion, I may see who chooses not to perform it to be lax, to be careless. So that is why the standard is very, very important to always maintain. And I'm going to give some examples that may further assist us in realizing how easily one can go extreme and how one can become lax in following the dictates of the religion of Islam. I think the examples of being extreme, they are too familiar. We are very familiar with them. They are very common amongst us. But I will just cite some of those examples that you know. Anybody that is not seeing a Muslim as different from a kafir, no matter the level of iman of that Muslim, then be careful, you have become an extremist. No matter how. If somebody is a Muslim, believing in La ilaha illallah, Muhammadun Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he has not done anything that will send him outside that fold of Islam. In other words, he has not done anything that invalidates his faith in Almighty Allah, in being a follower of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He may have some inadequacies in his or her practice of religion, but for you now to be equating such a person with a disbeliever altogether in the religion of Islam, in the Prophet of Islam, that is too extreme. That is going too far. A Muslim is always different. A believer in Almighty Allah must be seen, must be treated as somebody differently, as somebody that is different, honorably from whoever disobeys or whoever disbelieves in Almighty Allah. So that is one way of going extreme. You see some people, even if he is to correct the mistakes of his fellow Muslims, the way he will be talking, it will be worse than if he were to even talk about the non-believers. So that is too extreme. That is not how the da'wah to the way of Allah should be done. Always we must maintain that fact that whoever has believed in Almighty Allah, no matter how, no matter what he has fallen into, call it mistakes, call it misguidance or whatever, in as much as that has not sent him away from the fold of Islam, he remains a Muslim, then he must be treated honorably. He must be treated differently from the disbelievers in Almighty Allah. Another example of going too far in your practice of religion is when I've told you innovation is not welcome. Innovation in the religion of Islam is always something that is disapproved of. We must agree on that. Why should we disagree? The Prophet ﷺ said it clearly. Man ahdatha fi amrina hadha ma laysa minhu fahuwa raddu. Whoever introduces any new thing to this religion of ours, then such a thing will be rejected, returned back to whoever is introducing it. So that's a clear-cut injunction from the Prophet ﷺ to show that innovation, inventing new ways of practicing Islam is never welcome. But even in this one may not know by the time it goes to an extreme end. By the time it starts expounding the scope of what is bid'ah, what is innovation in religion. I told you, and I maintain that word repeatedly, innovation in the act of ibadah, in practicing religion. But we see people today expanding the scope of innovation to people's customs and practices. That is why some people will say, if you are blessed with a child, you must never organize a gathering to celebrate or to call people to come and rejoice with you. They will say it is bid'ah. No, bid'ah must always be limited of worship. I think the line was interrupted. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Yes,
Carry on.
yes,
Prof.
yes, Prof.
Oh, so we're giving two examples. On this example, we even hear of some people now extending the scope of bid'ah to what is purely not religious act, by claiming that because the Prophet ﷺ never used a spoon or any utensil while he ate, eating with a spoon becomes a bid'ah, and whoever eats with a spoon has become an innovator, and even become some of them will even declare him or her to be a kafir. That is going too much. That is going too far. Another instance, even in this aspect of bid'ah, scholars, generations after generations, they have described bid'ah as something that can be divided into what takes one out of religion and what is a bid'ah, an innovation, but it's not up to the limit of disqualifying one as a Muslim. So combining all forms of bid'ah and saying that every aspect of bid'ah sends you out of the scope of the fold of Islam is a form of extremism. For example, The Prophet ﷺ, in practicing his Islam, never used what we call tasbih to count our adhkar, but is ordinarily using adhkar makes one, the user, a kafir. No, because that is a part of bid'ah that scholar will say bid'atun ghayru mukaffira. Is an innovation that must be condemned. It's condemnable, but it's not to the level of somebody worshiping any other being beside Almighty Allah, and that one will nullify his or her faith. So this is just some examples of how people can easily get swayed, even in their adherence to the teachings of Islam, and unknowingly become extremists in that regard. But let me focus more on examples of laxity, because I believe this is where we are having a lot of misunderstandings, that a lot of people are falling victims of this in our society, that they are Muslims, but what they do not show them, do not project them as serious Muslims. They have not, we have a language in the university that we say students are not in good standing. We have many Muslims today that are not in good standing, if we must be frank with each other. They are Muslims, they are almost becoming what I said we used to say to people, they are nominal Muslims. So we need to be careful. There is a limit that you must not go below that level. Just as there is a limit that you must not exceed, that limit you must not perform below that level as well. For instance, we hear of it, we see them, some Muslims today, because he has a friend that is a non-Muslim, he will follow them to a church, maybe because of burial arrangement, and even they started with just following them. Now they will go there. By the time they are removing their caps, a Muslim in the church removing his cap, a Muslim in the church closing his eyes to pray, a Muslim saying amen by the time people are calling on any other being beside Allah. That is too dangerous. That is too dangerous. So it's a form of laxity in our adherence to the laws of Islam. When Allah has said it clearly in Al-Quran Al-Karim, lakum dinukum waliyadin. If it comes to matters of religion, we must maintain that dividing line. What is yours, and what is mine is mine. We can interact with one another. We can collaborate with each other in other areas of our lives. But when it comes to how I practice my religion and how they practice their religion, no matter whether they are relatives, they are friends, they are colleagues, going to that level is a form of laxity that may even endanger your faith. Yes, some of them can even endanger your faith, particularly when you go to somewhere and they are calling on a created being, that we in Islam believe that such a being, such a human being is a creature of Almighty Allah, not God, not the Son of God. Then you are saying amen is a form of laxity and a very dangerous one. Let me give another example. The example of hijab that I mentioned is unfortunate. In those days, what we used to know is that the identity of Muslims is hijab, Muslim ladies, Muslim women. But we have among you, the elites today, I'm not sure, but I hope such a group of people will not be among you, the Muslim engineers, the Muslim medical doctors that I'm addressing this morning. But if you have some of them, please call them to order. Hijab for a Muslim is an identity. How can you'll be surprised if someone is being introduced in a gathering as a Muslim, bearing a Muslim name, married to a Muslim, but you see her appearing in public without hijab, thinking that putting on hijab is a form of extremism. Hijab is part and parcel of the religion of Islam that was brought by the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's a form of laxity also that we must be careful about. We have Muslims today that during Ramadan, they don't fast. They don't observe Ramadan fasting and claiming to be Muslims. We have Muslims that do not even pray, but that one is not just a form of laxity. It may even invalidate your faith. Yes, because the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Al-ahadu alladhi baynana wa baynahum as-salat. The only difference, clear difference between the believers and non-believers, as far as we are concerned, Allah will judge your intention, will judge what is unknown to us. But if you don't see you observing prayers, 5 daily obligatory salawat prayers, then you are not a Muslim. Because that is the only thing that we can use as a yardstick for knowing who is and who is not a Muslim. A lot of Muslims, so-called Muslims, are falling victim of this today. They claim to be Muslims, but you don't see them observing prayers. You meet with them in your offices, in your places of work, in any social gathering. When it is time for Salat, Muslims will continue. And even some Muslims, their own laxity is not up to what can endanger their faith. But it's also a very serious crime in the sight of Almighty Allah, because you are happy. You are in a wedding ceremony. You are celebrating the achievement of somebody. Then it is time for Salah. You neglect that one. You continue with what you are doing. Even when you are going to pray, you will choose by yourselves at the time you are going to pray, not the time chosen by Almighty Allah for you to pray. It's a form of laxity. When you attend meetings, all of us, we see this one happening almost in every place of work. You are in a meeting of 3-4 hours. You don't see it as something that is necessary for you to take excuse that I'm going to pray. It is time for my salat as a Muslim. If you are not doing that, that means you are lax as a Muslim. So it's a form of laxity for you to be in a place that you will have to be for hours, neglecting it is time for you to go out and pray. And I always wonder, in meetings that I attend, I see people going out for various excuses. Even if someone sees a number calling him or her on his or her telephone, if he doesn't want those who are in the meeting to listen to their conversation, he or she will go out of the meeting without any problem. If you want to use the toilet, nobody stops you from going to the toilet. But if Muslims find it difficult to go out of any meeting to observe Salah, is a dangerous sign of laxity that you must be very, very careful about. So many Muslims today, they are healthy, wealthy, ill, strong enough, but you don't see them observing Hajj. They think Hajj is a form of tourism, that if I choose, I can go on Hajj, and if I choose, I cannot, I don't go. Hajj, you must know as a Muslim, it is one of the pillars of Islam. So we have a healthy, wealthy, hale, and strong, agile Muslim in this life at 60, at 50, some of them at 70, has never performed Hajj. That is true. That is very bad. As a Muslim, is a sign of being lax in your religion. Hajj is not to be taken as mere tourism. It's actually a pillar of your religion. When you hear of Muslims today, he's a Muslim, but he's a drunkard. He drinks always. Some of them will say, okay, he doesn't drink during Ramadan, but immediately after Ramadan, he resumes his habit of drinking alcohol. It's a form of laxity. It's a form of laxity. So we can go on and on to cite examples of what you and I know of what we observe in the society that form one or another form, that is one or another form of laxity. And in as much as we must be careful of not being becoming extremists in our practice of religion, it is also dangerous for us to become lax, negligent, and careless in our practice of religion. And finally, what is the way out? The way out, I will summarize it in just one or two sentences. The way out, the solution to the two are diseases, extremism and laxity, is to go back to the standard. Going back to the standard. When you have a standard, it is easy for you to always measure what is beyond and what is below. It's unfortunate that most of us today, even among the religious scholars, we are neglecting that standard. What I mean by the standard here is the life history of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Luckily enough, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was selected purposefully by Allah from among us human beings. If he wanted, he would have made an angel to be a messenger that will be sent to us. He would have chosen among the jinns, the demons, to be the ones to deliver the message to us. But he said, purposefully, I selected my prophet, my messengers to you from among you, so that you will not find any excuse of saying, oh, he could do it because he wasn't a human being like us. The Prophet ﷺ, think of anything, think of any position you find yourself in life. You will see an example of how the Prophet ﷺ led his own life. He was a family man. He was a political leader. He was a military chief. Think of anything. He underwent so many problems, bigger than what you may be encountering today. He had how many children? 7 children, and he lost all of them but one while alive. He was born into this life as an orphan. So he went through so many challenges. And he maintained that balance. He never became an extremist or a lax person in following the dictates of Almighty Allah. So I think the real solution is for us to always go back to standard. We are making a mistake today. We can have a scholar that is a follower of the Prophet too, but he does not have that guarantee that the Prophet ﷺ had. What is that guarantee? Allah guaranteed that whatever the Prophet said, whatever he preached, that could not be out of the way of Almighty. That could not be a mistake. It's exactly how Allah had wanted it to be. وَمَا يَنْطِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ. So it's only the Prophet ﷺ that you can take as a complete role model. So when we look at that standard as laid down by the Prophet ﷺ, I believe strongly it will be a way out of these two problems of extremism and laxity. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to save us, all of us, from these two diseases. They are very dangerous ones. To save us and to save our families, our wives, our children, our beloved ones, so that we become as Allah wants us to be. Ja'annakum ummatan wasata. May Allah make that easy for us. And once again, I thank you for organizing this program and for inviting me to come and share my thoughts and my ideas with you. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakumullah khairan, Prof. You are welcome. So, inshallah, without going into, excuse me. So, inshallah, without adding other comments, I think the lecture it's explanatory. So we go directly to question and answer. So already there are questions here on the question and answer tab. So we can all drop our questions in the tab. So already we have 3. So Prof, the first question here says, there are Muslims employer who frown at their employee offering salat during work hours because they don't pray themselves. How do one deal with this kind of employers?
How do we deal with these kind of employers? Well, in dealing with them, we need to explore more than one option could be actually explored in dealing with them. One is for us to stand for our rights as Muslims, as Nigerian Muslims. I believe the questioner is referring to the situation in Nigeria, because that is even not taking place in most of the civilized world today, where they allow you to practice your religion freely. So first and foremost is for us, that is part of what I said is a challenge for those of you that Allah has chosen to be leaders in whatever respect. We must find ways of fighting for the rights of Muslims. The fact that you are not praying does not mean when you employ me, you deprive me of my right to practice my religion. And that is what I would strongly and forcefully advise, that Muslims who are facing challenges like this should come out, talk to those whom he or she believes they can be of assistance. We come up as a group in a way that is decent enough. We can ask for the rights of those Muslims. As far as I know, Nigeria is a country that guarantees freedom of religion, and an employer does not have that right of depriving or denying right of religion, constitutionally guaranteed, as in the section 38 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, so many other laws. So that is the first approach. Now, if that one should fail, or if we are if all of us are lax, that's another form of laxity. Always surrendering without making an effort to satisfy our Creator. We always surrender whenever we have a challenge. It's also a very serious sign of being lax as a group of people, as members of the Muslim community. So if we are still lax, we are not serious enough to take up to fight for our rights, then we will have to address it on the individual basis. You now, as an individual that is faced with this challenge, what should be your position as a Muslim? You see, is a choice that must be made between your dunya and your al-akhirah, between your life in this world and your life in the hereafter. And what Islam allows us is that you don't have, if you don't have any reason of being asked to choose between this world and the next world, then it is allowed for you to combine the two. That is even the recommended way of life. And that is why our prayer as Muslims, as mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, is Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasana. So the combination of the good of the two worlds is what is recommended for us. But if it becomes a matter of making a choice between what pleases your employer and what pleases your God, if you are not lax, that is another way of laxity. You must know the answer. If you are forced, originally, I'm repeating this, you ought not to have been forced as a Nigerian. You have that right not to be boxed into a corner where you must either choose to obey your God or you obey your employer. But if we are lax and not taking that serious enough as a group of Muslims, then you as an individual, you have a choice to make. And if that is your position, unless if you are lax, the answer should be choose what pleases your God over and above what pleases an employer. So that is the answer to that one.
Communal responsibility and individual responsibility. The second question, Prof. The questioner has requested that you give us a practical example of acts that can take one out of the fold of Islam.
Okay. That's beautiful. Practical examples of what one can do that is capable of taking him or her out of the fold of Islam.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hello, hello.
Assalamu alaikum.
I'm still talking.
Do
I still have the floor? I don't know what is happening. Hello?
Okay. I think someone has a question, yes. Mr. Bidemi.
Yes, Prof. Yes.
But we have not answered this question. Do we take the two questions together? Okay, go ahead, okay. Mr. Bidemi. What's your question?
Hello?
What's your question?
Please, who is Mr. Bidemi?
I can see him on my screen here.
The question.
If he's not
Anyway,
available, we can go
Because,
to Mr. Ibrahim Olariwaju.
no, there's a question we've not asked, we've not answered.
No, there's a pending question which
Yes, we've
Prof
not
is
answered that
about to
one.
answer.
Someone asked about
Okay, that's
practical
fine.
examples.
Please.
Do I go ahead on that?
Prof, can you go ahead?
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Prof, please.
Yes.
A good example of this is when you are calling on another being beside Almighty Allah in whatever way. When you call on any other being, because that is the right of Almighty Allah, that He alone should be called upon for assistance in what He alone is capable of giving. We must understand that clearly. You don't ask any other being what any being is not capable of giving you, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you should make supplication, make dua, even asking a prophet of Allah to give you child, then that one will nullify your faith in Almighty Allah, because it is He alone that can provide such an assistance. So that's a clear example. Some people will be giving, I always warn people of the kind of prayers that people will give you. We give you a form of prayer. You are looking for wealth, you are looking for money, you are looking for children. If it is in your prayer that you call on a particular jinn, a demon, they would ask you to be calling on Ya Jaki Jaki Ya Ilu, or the rest of those names that are not part of the most beautiful names of Almighty Allah. So please be careful. It may take you out of the fold of Islam. So any right that belongs to Almighty Allah, if it is to be taken and given to another being, that's a very good example of what can take one outside the fold of Islam. We've also mentioned the issue of Salat. If a Muslim should not see him or herself as being under a duty to observe 5 daily prayers, that alone is sufficient of taking him out of the fold of Islam. If he or she believes it's not under a duty to observe Salah, it's very dangerous. And in fact, any other religious obligatory practice, if he feels that if I like as a Muslim, I can fast in Ramadan, and if I'm not pleased, I can choose not to fast, that alone can nullify your faith as a Muslim. So those are some of the examples that come to mind now in answering that question.
Thank you, Prof. Because of time schedule and Prof schedule too.
Yes, it's almost 10:30 now.
One more question so that we can release Prof. So the one I'm going to read now says, Salaam alaikum. I would like Prof to comment on the activities of Murik in fighting for rights of Nigerian Muslims. Quite a good number of Muslims, including some of us here, usually frown against the comments and actions of Murik.
Usually frown against the comment. Please, can you come again? The question, the last part of that question.
Quite a good number of Muslims, including some of us here, usually frown against the comments and actions of Murik.
Okay. Well, Murik, I understand that is a Muslim rights concern. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
I've always had the opportunity in the past to see some of the postings by these organizations. You see, we need to differentiate between two things: the cause and the approach that is followed by a group in actualizing that cause or an objective. Any Muslim, we should never disagree on that one. That if we have anybody that has the capacity of helping another Muslim in fighting for the right of another Muslim, that is even an obligation. Because in most cases, what you will fight for will fall under what the Prophet ﷺ described as munkar. That's something that is not acceptable in Islam. A Muslim is being denied the right to observe Salah in his place of worship, like we said. For you, if you have that capacity of fighting for his right, is even an obligation. And I don't think any Muslim will differ or will disagree on this. What I think is that some of us may not be favorably disposed to some of the methods being used either by Murik or by other organizations. But the cause, the purpose of the fight itself is a genuine one that must be supported by all Muslims. It's even an obligation. If you see a Muslim being denied his right to worship Almighty Allah, so it's an obligation on all of us. But let us look into what we are not comfortable with, what we think is not even in keeping with the ways of correcting mistakes sometimes in the religion of Islam, then we can advise whoever is doing that, either Murik or other. But we must never mix up the two things, that what they are doing in fighting for the right is what we are condemning. No Muslim should condemn that. But I agree they are not perfect. They are human beings. They may make mistakes, then we try to correct their mistakes.
Thank you, Prof.
Assalamu alaikum.
Fine, something.
Hello?
Okay, this is me again. So yours will be the last question.
Is it a question?
Yeah, it's a question. Hello?
Okay, that will be the last question.
If someone traveled from like 30 kilometers or to another village to maybe went there to work. Now, every day he always spends like every week, like he always spends weeks there. Sunday he came back to meet his family. So can someone observe qasri? Maybe there are some people that are saying the qasri maybe 3 days or some days like that. Please, can you please enlighten me for the qasri? How many days? How far can someone say qasri? Something like that, sir.
Okay, thank you, Bidemi Olawale. Well, the issue of qasr, that is shortening the number, reducing the number of the units of prayer that you observe, particularly the 4 units salat, Dhuhr, Asr, and Isha while on a journey. There is no controversy on that one. If you are on a journey, you are a traveler, you can enjoy that facility. But you see, the bottom line is what qualifies you to be a traveler. That is where all these issues are coming up because of this particular area of how do we describe you? What qualifies you to be a traveler? Some will use the benchmark of how many kilometers you've traveled. Like you have rightly mentioned that if you travel for a number of kilometers, in the opinions of some scholars, the issue is not with whether you can enjoy the facility of shortening the prayer while on the journey or not. That is not even debatable. It's a law of Almighty Allah. But for you to enjoy such a facility, Allah says you must be a traveler. Now they are now trying to look at an acceptable yardstick to measure who is and who is not a traveler. So some scholars say, if you have traveled for a number of kilometers, then you are a traveler. If you travel less, you are not. In those days, they used to say if you travel for even about 36 or 40 kilometers, because they used to travel on backs on camels, horses, or even by walking. So that is one. Number two, some scholars are of the opinion that no, we have to use the parameter of how many days are you going to use on that journey. If you know you are going to be traveling to a place and you will spend 4 days or more, no, we don't see you as a traveler again. But if you are there for 1, 2, 3 days, no, it's acceptable that you are still on a journey. You are a traveler. You see, we can go and on and on to look for parameters that will assist us in arriving at this conclusion, in answering this answer, who is and who is not a traveler. And you see, they will all be confusing. For example, the first one that I told you, in those days when people were used to traveling on camels and horses, They said if you have traveled for 36 kilometers, you are a traveler already. Or if you are walking on your feet, yes, if you can walk for 30, 40 kilometers, you are already on a journey. But you see, today, some of us travel almost every day, that number of kilometers in going and coming from our places of work. So will we still refer to ourselves as being on a journey constantly? Is that the intention of that rule of Islam? No. That is why what scholars, majority of scholars are in support of is that, look, any benchmark that we use may be correct and may not be correct. But the best criterion that they choose, they believe can be used and will always give an adequate result is for us to refer back to people's practices and customs. Anytime those customs and practices change, we change that benchmark again. Like what I've told you now, when they were traveling on horses, on camels, when you travel for 36 kilometers, oh, people of those days will see you are on a journey already. But today, people don't see you as being on a journey for having traveled for even 50 kilometers. Then we have to change that benchmark. So the bottom line is that it's a matter of how do you yourself and people around in that locality, what is their understanding of journey? It varies from one generation to another. It varies from time to time. I used to remember in some 20, 25 years ago, some of the villages surrounding our major cities, when you go to those villages, they will welcome you as somebody coming from another city, somebody that's on a journey. But that city itself has expanded today, that those villages have become areas. I think good example is those of you in Lagos there. Some of places that you refer to as areas in Lagos today, they were actually different cities in the past. So that is why we must be careful. We don't use the yardstick of how many kilometers, neither should we use the yardstick of how many days, but it's about the custom and practices of people. You yourself, ask yourself that question. If I'm going to a job that I go every day and come back every day, even if it's 100 kilometers, would I see myself as somebody on a journey or a traveler? Would people around me see me as somebody on a journey? Then the answer should be what will guide you in knowing whether you can observe qasr or not. Now, answering the question, Bidemi's question straight forward, if you are going to a place to work, you have a permanent employment. That's another yardstick that may not be available in the olden days. You have a permanent employment in a place. You cannot claim to be a traveler to that place. You have a permanent employment that says you are employed here. Your location of work is here. Then you have become a dweller of that place. Whether or not you live every day or every week, that does not matter. So in answering your question, I don't see you as somebody who qualifies to be shortening prayer since you have an employment there, a permanent employment there, that you know that it's a matter of when you choose to go to visit your family. So you are not a traveler when you go to your permanent place of job, of work. Wallahu a'lam. So on this note, can we call it a day, or you continue with your program, but I will take my leave.
Jazakumullah khairan, Prof.
Thank you.
So, on
Wassalamu
behalf
alaikum
of the organizers and the attendees, wa alaikum salam to Allah wa barakatuh. Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank
So,
you.
inshallah.
I appreciate it, sir.
Okay, you are welcome, sir. So, inshallah, we are going to continue with the program. The next thing on the agenda is the health and technology tips. The first one we are going to take is the health tips, and that is going to be anchored by Dr. Folake Lawal. Who is Dr. Folake Lawal? Dr. Folake Lawal is a double board certified physician in infectious diseases and internal medicine. She is the founder of Amal Outreach, which is a non-profit organization that is focused on social development driven through healthcare. They currently support over 300 hypertension and diabetic clients in Lagos Island through compliance monitoring. Dr. Folake Lawal is currently enrolled at the University of California, Berkeley, with a master in public health, in health policy and management. Dr. Lawal is passionate about implementation of health systems redesign and delivering an optimal primary and preventive health care. Dr. Folake Lawal, you are welcome on board. Over to you, please.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I would like to just quickly share my screen. So let me find that. Am I able to share screen? Yes, let me see. 1 minute, I stopped my video.
So 10 minutes for your presentation.
Dr. Lawal, you are a panelist, so you should be able to share your screen.
Yes, I don't know, it's looking weird on my side. So maybe I'll just talk.
Okay.
Okay, so today I'm just going to be talking quickly about acute febrile illnesses. And this, I thought about talking about this because Nigeria, we're fond of, you talk to somebody, I wasn't feeling fine, I went to the doctor, and then they'll tell you what happened. Oh, sorry, give me a minute. Let me reel back my accent. So they would tell you, oh, it was malaria and typhoid. It was malaria and typhoid. And I feel like this brings about the overuse or misuse of antibiotics. So in talking about acute febrile illness, I guess the first thing is to even determine what is a fever. And fever is, the normal body temperature is between 36.5 degrees Celsius to 37.5. Of course, 37.6 is not quite a fever. You might feel like, oh, aramilo, dear, something like that. Okay, so I think I found my screen. And can you see my screen? All right, so let me stop my video and make sure. All right, so in the temperature range somewhere, after like 37.8 degrees Celsius, then we can officially be talking about actually having an actual fever. And then, so acute febrile illness itself is just a sudden onset of a disease state that has fever as a component, and it's accompanied by a lot of other symptoms. So someone can say, I have fever and a headache, fever and runny nose, fever and cough, fever and chest pain, maybe fever and diarrhea, fever and muscle ache, or, shivering and things like that. So it sometimes comes with a constellation of symptoms. And when we say something is acute, it really is something that's lasting about 7 days, less than 7 days. Once it's above 7 days, then you're talking about what we call subacute, which is less than acute or more than acute. Then chronic is somewhere between several weeks to months running like that. So that is, let me change my screen. Okay. And so the other thing is what causes fever. A lot of things cause fevers. Infections are the most common cause. You have bacterial, viral infections, parasites, fungal infections, bacterial infection. A lot of those things are the ones that, we use antibiotics for. Viral infections, honestly, it runs its course. and you really can't treat the virus. Most of the times you can't treat the virus itself, and it's just like the symptoms. Okay, so because I have a viral infection, I'm having diarrhea, you can use something to stop the diarrhea. You can replace the water you're losing. If you're having a cough, you can suppress the cough. But the virus itself, for most viruses, we're unable to actually directly treat them, except for a few. Parasitic infections, malaria is actually a parasite. There's a lot of other parasitic infections that we can treat, like worm and things like that. Fungal, candida is the one we know the most, but people have a lot of other fungal infections, you know, like things like ringworm are fungal infections, but those ones don't cause fever. So you can have like a fungal blood infection. You can have a fungal lung infection. People can actually have fungal urinary tract infection that just lasts for so long and things like that. Autoimmune disease, and I said autoimmune disease flares. So I'm sure some of us have heard of things like lupus or rheumatoid arthritis. And these diseases on a longer or bigger span, they tend to cause fevers that, you know, that maybe last for a longer time. But when they have flares, because it's a disease that goes on and off, when they have flares, sometimes they have like this acute fevers and they are wondering. So if people don't have the right doctors or the right diagnosis, they are wondering every time, like, oh, every 3 months or every 6 months, things like that. Cancers are a big, big issue. Because a lot of times in Nigeria, people are having fevers, they are going to the chemist, they are going to one nurse, they are going to things, or sometimes, unfortunately, and I'm a doctor, I used to train in Nigeria, and this is no pun to Nigerian doctors, but a lot of times people actually go to the hospitals and they don't get the right diagnosis, and 6 months down the line, 3 years down the line, then someone now comes and says, oh, this person has a blood cancer, or this person has some cancer or tumor somewhere. So cancers, if you're having persistent fever, which is not an acute one, but it goes beyond acute, it starts acute and then you have it for a longer time. Drug reactions also happens. I'm going to go straight to viral infections because bacterial infections can be straightforward. But viral infections, like I said, you can have respiratory tract. A lot of times you see kids where be like, I won't shove you know, there's cold season. We call it upper respiratory infection. It's just, you know, you breathe from your nose down to your lungs, and somewhere from your nose to your throat here is upper airway, and you have infections of there. So sometimes, you know, your throat is scratchy, you are running nose, there's catarrh, is greenish, is yellowish. Sometimes you have fever with that. A lot of it is infection. It's viral infection. You can have a lower respiratory tract viral infection. You can have, I'm not going to bug you with the big names of the viruses, but these things, you know, they tend to cause respiratory tract infection. Hepatitis infections are also very big, and it's something I want us to take key note of. Hepatitis A is one that we get through food. So people who, even when you cook at home, because you can go and buy meat or tomato in the market, the woman did not wash her hands, man or woman, whoever, they didn't wash their hands properly when they use the bathroom. They sell the food to you, you get home, you don't wash it well, or you don't cook it properly. Hepatitis A is what we call fecal oral. From feces, it gets in the feces, it gets in the food, you eat it, you get infected. The good thing is it resolves and it goes away. Hepatitis B and hepatitis C don't go away like that. Most people who get hepatitis B in the acute phase can have a fever. The only way sometimes people know is they feel sick. When they are getting better, their eyes get yellow and then it goes away. For a lot of people who actually have hepatitis B in the acute phase, they have it, and many people progress into the chronic phase. So if you've had a viral illness or whatever, and I'll get to, you know, the summary of it later. Hepatitis C, people can have an acute phase where they are feeling ill and then it goes away. And some people, a percentage of people have long-term illness, a percentage of people, their body takes care of it. So these are some things that you want when you have these fevers. You want to just talk to a doctor, get a proper screen. Acute HIV infection is something that is very, very big. Yes, you know, of course, when I mention HIV as an infectious disease personnel, I don't even rule anybody out. This is a Muslim community. Some people are rolling their eyes like, oh yeah, HIV is not us. HIV is some people. Don't trust anybody except yourself. And well, maybe your spouse, that's you should trust, they should be trustworthy, but you can get HIV from a lot of a lot of other instances other than sexual contact. There are people who are health workers who work with and get exposed. There are some, Nigeria is littered with dirt. So imagine someone uses one blade, drops it somewhere, somebody go gain your car, somebody gets stabbed and you get punctured with your leg. Hepatitis is actually very, very notorious for that, because I worked in a hospital and we used to be scared because blood that dropped on a gurney that's been there for 3 months, and that blood gets inside you, you can get hepatitis B. HIV probably less likely. So acute HIV infection is something that in the acute phase, people just feel ill, and it presents in different ways, but people feel ill, they have a fever, sometimes a rash, sometimes it's diarrhea, something happens. Now, to the big ones that I really want us to focus on, because Nigeria is what we call holo-endemic, which means we have like over 90% endemicity, which means you have this infection almost all year round. Mosquito-borne infections are holo-endemic in Nigeria. Even though Lassa fever is not malaria-borne, it is seasonal, and Lassa fever is carried by rodents. And Lassa fever is carried by rodents, which is mice. As seen, they get in our food, they run around in your house, and I'm going to talk about how you get them. Mosquito-borne are the big ones. In medical school, I went to medical school, they didn't really talk about dengue, chikungunya, West. Now, when I traveled and I was like, West, what? And I remembered a child of a friend of mine who we thought had meningitis, and this child, literally like a 3-year-old girl, all of a sudden could not talk, could not see, could not do anything. So I was like, oh my God, that sounds like West now. So let's see. Okay, so this is just a quick map that shows us, it's a heat map that shows distribution in West Africa. You can see the map on the left. If we start from the map on the right that shows the dots, you see Nigeria there where you have the green, the blue, the pink, the yellow. Zika has been in Nigeria since God knows when. Some professor had found antibodies for Zika in the 1960s. Yellow fever has been here since the 70s. Dengue virus, we don't talk about it a lot. We have dengue virus. Chikungunya too, we have that. Now, if you look at the map on the left, it shows you, concentrated colors. So the places where you have the darkest colors, where you have 4 of these diseases, and then the lighter you have 3, 2. So Nigeria has at least 2 of these diseases overlapping at a lot of point in time. So they call them mostly arboviruses. And if you can see the top of my presentation, the AR is just arthropod, B is just BO is born. So arthropod borne, which is just insect-borne viruses. The next is the distribution of Lassa fever. Lassa fever, it's very, very sad that it's actually endemic. It is fatal in Nigeria. People die in droves, and we don't talk about it. The government doesn't give enough awareness. The regular general hospitals don't talk about it. I don't know why. And people die from it. So this, you can see Nigeria is like blue, and that blue is people who are very endemic for it, who have it a long time, as well as Guinea, Sierra Leone, Liberia. This last slide here, or picture here, is West Nile virus. And you can see Nigeria is blue, along with a lot of other countries. And this is just places also. And this one is also carried by mosquitoes. Now, the ones I'm going to focus on, again, are the ones that, they look like malaria. Most of them are transmitted by mosquitoes. We have them a lot, and we don't talk about them a lot. Lassa fever, like I said, mice, as in you have rats, mice, whatever running around your house. The virus is from in their urine. So imagine you have gari that is in a sack. So imagine you put the sack on the floor, the rats or the mice pees on the floor, the thing absorbs into your gari and you eat it, or some child goes in there, plays with the bag of elubo and scatters everything. So when it's dried and aerosolized, people inhale it. There's also human to human transmission. So somebody is infected, that person is coughing, they're having diarrhea, you are coming in contact. Doctors have actually died trying to take care of people who have Lassa fever. And the presentation, many people actually don't have anything, just like this coronavirus that we're talking about up to 80%. So of every 10 persons that have it, about 8 of them will not show anything. Very few of them, maybe they just like, around Romi, around I'm having a headache, and maybe I'm a little tired, things like that. Lassa fever is a hemorrhagic fever. So people who actually show a lot of symptoms. They have bleeding, they have bloody diarrhea and things like that. These things are very, very risky in pregnant women. I actually had a colleague who had early, preterm labor because some very dirty person in our office had a cough and spread it to everyone. I had a really bad cough. She was pregnant, she had a cough. She went into early labor. West Nile fever, the last three are spread by mosquitoes. And again, for most of them, like I said, very asymptomatic. West Nile, I want to bring to our particular attention. It is a neurotropic, neuroinvasive disease. So you see people, someone, all of a sudden, ó sick ni, bàtà the hospital, next thing, ojú ẹ̀fọ́. Because this virus attacks the nerves, you see people, they'll say, it can look like polio. It can have paralysis of both legs. It can have paralysis of the neck down. And some people just go into a coma because it invades into the brain. So depending on where somebody is lucky or unlucky that it gets into, it's a very small number of people that have this very severe illness. So imagine if 1 out of every 100 have it. Imagine every other person that didn't show anything. And this is why we should take this thing seriously. So it's not just about treating malaria and rushing to the chemist to buy medicine. It's about preventing mosquito bites. Chikungunya looks a lot like malaria because you have that joint pain. You have fever for about 2 days, you have chills, and everything after a while is mostly the joint pain. So someone will be like, last month, Timothy, long complain, romanticism, and they just feel tired and they have a lot of joint pain. Dengue fever is funny because the first time you actually have dengue fever, nothing happens in terms of nothing really big bad happens. You may have the fever, it will go away. The second time people have dengue, oh my God, that's the deadly one where they have a higher chance of bleeding and things like that. So what is the point of all this? It really is, not all fever is malaria and typhoid. Please consult your doctor. And of course, yes, as much as I would not 100% endorse Dr. Google. I think people, we're in the age of technology and information, and everybody should be up to date. And again, this is not knocking Nigerian doctors. This is just, I'm just going to be frank because we've seen a lot of fallout. And it's just, you want to read up on what you have. A lot of us have this tunnel thing where people are talking about, they just focus on one disease and they're like, it's malaria, go and treat it, private hospital or whatever, even government hospital. And people be like, why should I even go to GH when I'm going to queue for 2 hours? I'll just go to chemist and buy this medicine. One is that overusing antibiotics means that when you actually have an infection, it's like, how would I put it? It's like showing something to your body, or what am I even saying? Imagine when we were all in secondary school, where there are some students, you know, that they've beat them. The day that one teacher will come and they will actually do something by you, beat them, they'll just come and chest it and dust it. That's what happens to some of these bacteria, where you are using antibiotics when you don't need them. You're exposing your body to bits and pieces of it. The day you actually have a serious infection, the bacteria is just going to come and chest it in, and you'll be using the amoxicillin, and you just be like, Oga, you never start to, and they'll be like, or somebody said they don't know what, because you're not treating it with the right antibiotics, so you're not going to the right specialist, you're not doing the right tests. So that's one, in terms of let us reduce how much antibiotics that we're just using by ourselves at home and buying indiscriminately. Secondly is, as much as possible, reduce mosquito bites. Is the core, is one of the big messages I have, is how do you minimize mosquito bites in your area? And that is not just about, putting mosquito nets or spraying insecticide, because inhaling those are toxic too. Is cleaning your environment, stagnant water. How do you prevent and reduce? We should research that. We're all educated. Research, how do you reduce mosquito breeding in your area? Mosques are actually a very good place because we use a lot of water. Drainage system in Nigeria is not that bad. So we have a lot of stagnant water around our mosque. What do we want to do about that? And then obviously, when you have illnesses, make sure you talk to your doctor and make sure you are also aware of the symptoms. Not, I mean, when people tell me that, I personally just get irritated. But we should be conscious of our health and knowing what is going on in our body. When things have been going on for a while, you've been having some kind of feeling or joint pain or headache that's persistent, please make sure you don't just go to a chemist and keep buying something or talking to someone or rubbing something. Try to get a proper diagnosis, because prevention is better than cure. Catching something early and treating it early with 200 naira is better than having to spend 200,000 to treat it when it's much worse. So that's just my quick tip for the day. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. So stop sharing. I'm done. Any questions? Brother Usman Saka, you're muted if you were talking. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dalila Lawal, for your for that tips. It's very, very much appreciated. I'm not sure, we've actually been we actually gone beyond our time, and so we may not be able to take any questions at this time, but thank you very much. We'll then call on this, at this point, we'll call on Engineer Muhyiddin Ashir to please give us the technology tips. He's going to be talking to us about Internet of Things. Ustaz Muhyiddin Ashir, can you please unmute your mic and share your screen if you need to?
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please carry on.
Okay, yeah. Can you see my screen? My screen clear?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Hello? Hello, yeah, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. We can. It's fine.
So we're going to be talking about IoTs, which is the Internet of Things. And yeah, first things first, we just need to know what IoTs are. And IoT is the Internet of Things for short. We call them IoTs. So it's a system of integrated computer devices, mechanical and digital machines, objects, animals, people, are provided with unique identifiers and the ability to transfer data over a network without requiring direct human-to-human or human-to-computer interaction. So what it means is from the internet. So when we talk about things in this sense, we are talking about, it can be a person, it can be just natural objects that we are used to. It can be things in our houses, like our generators, like our fans, like our bulbs, like our meters, and it can be animals that are inserted, that chips are inserted in them, or even with our automobiles, our cars, that have built-in sensors that allows the driver when the tire pressure is low, or any other natural or man-made object that can be assigned an internet protocol address and is able to transfer data over a network. So I'm saying now that if you have your CCTV at home, CCTV has it has an IP address, you can apparently monitor what is happening at home directly from your phones or directly from your PCs, if you so want it that way. So why do we need IoTs? So IoTs only help us to live and work smarter, as well as gain complete control over our lives. So what are the essentials of IoT? IoT is a software. I'm trying as much as possible to break this down, because I understand that we don't have only engineers here. So Mr. Barry. Okay, thank you. So why IoTs? So it's very essential in our home. So I give an example here. So now I want to put on the generator from anywhere I am around the world. I can actually have it on my phone and switch off the generator on if my cars are being I'm being played with some of my children. And so I connected my cars to my phones, and the moment the car started, I received a message on my phone, or I received an alert on my phone that the car was started. So I have a friend that he likes one of these special cars, and he doesn't like anybody driving it. So what happens? Somebody came to his house. I think his wife's younger sister or something like that. And she knew that such things were on the car already. And on the very day, she just went to them, started the car, and the guy called her immediately. And the guy called home immediately and was asking, "So come, who is starting this car?" So it was said that it was so and so person, and with that, she was apparently scolded. So it allows us to apparently know what exactly is happening around us and be able to manage our lives smarter. On the issue of security, so I want to open the door. I want only people that I want that need to have access to a place, have access to a place. So what I'm saying is that the door is locked, jammed for everybody, and it's only when I see that it is somebody that is invited. So at this point, go there. If you're invited, you come in. If you're not invited, the door is not going to open. So that's some of the things that happen around IoT. And they assist us with cost maintenance too. Of course, so I'm at home now, or I'm not at home right now, and somebody is just playing with all the bulbs at home, taking the electricity and things like that. I don't need to be there to apparently switch off the lights so that the person knows that I'm apparently controlling everything from home. So for businesses too, IoT enable companies to automate processes and reduce labor costs and cut down on wastes with improvement in service delivery, making it less expensive to manufacture and deliver goods, and as well as offering transparency to customer transactions. So part of the things that companies do these days is that everybody's apparently working with IoT. So I want to know, well, for people like us that are in the taxation field, at times, you have people that apparently come around, and when you're asking them specific questions, they already have the questions at the tip of their phones. Not that they stored all of it on the phone, but at any point they need access to those particular information, they can get it at any point in time. So that means that they're apparently living smarter, and they can control whatever they want to control from wherever they want to control it. So we have some pros and cons of IoTs. So number one, part of the advantages of IoTs is that it gives us access to information anywhere we are in the world at any point in time. Number two is that it improves communication between connected electronic devices, if we so want it to be that way. Number three is that you can transfer information over a network, so you are saving time and money. You don't necessarily need to be there before you apparently get the information that you need. Number four is that it automates tasks and helps us to improve the quality of our business services and reduces the need for a whole lot of human intervention. It also has its own disadvantages too, although we must not be put away with the disadvantages. Number one is hacking. People can easily hack. People, I'm not saying they can easily hack, but it's possible that people hack into systems that and get some information that they are not meant to have access to. Number two is that we might apparently have to be dealing with quite a number of IoT devices. And what this means is that it's going to be quite troublesome to be dealing with a whole lot of IoT devices if we don't, especially if we're not technologically savvy. Number three is that there's a bug on the system somewhere along the line. Any device that is also connected might also be bugged. Number four is that right now there are no international standards for IoTs as at this point in time. So it's difficult for devices from different manufacturers to communicate with each other. So examples of IoT applications that we have around the world. Number one, some people live in very, very smart homes, like I've told us before. So we have smart thermostats, smart appliances, electricity, and the rest of it like that. So all of it are controlled right from their smartphones. Number two is that wearable devices. So we have smartwatches. We have smartwatches that apparently alert us about whatever we want to do if we have to set it on them that way. Number two is that we have those smartwatches that can apparently be connected to our phones. So if I want somebody to be seeing me in where I'm going, without apparently having phone on, I can put on the smart wristwatches, and they can also be seeing me from where they are. If you want to be in virtual reality, so in people like playing games and things like that, there are some companies that have apparently done some virtual reality headsets, and these ones make you feel as if you're apparently, so if you're in a war game right now, and you have these headsets on, the moment there's a heat of some sort, the person will also feel it. Not that the person will be injured really, but the person will also feel it. So yeah, also some wearables devices for public safety. Number 4, which of course I know might be interesting to all of us here, is that in the health sector, IoT offers a whole lot of benefits to be able to monitor patients closely than we apparently do as at this point in time. We have smart buildings that can reduce energy costs and things like that. In agriculture, we have smart farming systems that can monitor light, temperature, humidity, soil. Smart city deployment, or in the smart city deployment, we have street lights, smart street lights, and some other information too that can apparently help us conserve energy, can help us monitor traffic, that can help us do the other things too like that. So those are part of the applications that are already on ground for IoTs. Now, as Muslim engineers and our Muslim engineers and Muslim medical practitioners. Number 1 is that our role in IoT is that, number 1, we need to understand what the technology is all about. Number 2 is that we need to collaborate. We need to invent properly, and we need to, in invention is not done in just one direction. So we need to collaborate on a whole lot of things to ensure that we to get our own IoT equipment outside there. Number 3, we design these applications. We design whatever we want to do with IoTs. We build them so that people can apparently start using them. And of course, we too are also people, so we apparently use all these IoTs too, and then we invent and then we modify as time goes on. So conclusively, is that yes, the world is changing, and the earlier we get into the emerging markets, for us, the far better it is. We're in the COVID times, and these days, of course, if we were told ourselves at the point in time that we don't have to do a gathering of people from around the world, not having to come to one specific place for everybody to sit down and everybody just do it on the internet and things like that, and we all hear ourselves, we understand what we are saying, we ask questions, we have answers, there are rooms and there are things like that. Some of them might have said, well, maybe it's impossible, but today we know that it's not only a possibility, it is what we are doing now as at this point in time. Right, the COVID times, and it's sure that it's only people that can innovate and control technology in all fields, including different fields like that, military, economy, etc., that will control the world. Now, let me give an example of what I mean by economy. So these days now we have things like cryptocurrency that is coming in to obstruct the normal paper currency that we apparently know. So there are things like that are happening as at this point in time. And guess what? A whole lot of things are happening there. And if we are not too careful, or maybe in the nearest future, some blockchain and things like that. So we need to understand an event so that we can eventually, which is the purpose of IoTs, put our lives in our own control. So I hope that this was as simple enough for us as to understand what IoTs are, and I pray that Allah accepts us and act of ibadah for each and every one of us. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan, Engineer Medin. Time fast spent. On that note, I would like to invite Engineer Jawando, the LASUMEGA president, to do the vote of thanks.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Okay, we thank Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the successful program. And we pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the knowledge that we have acquired today, both on the main lecture as delivered by Professor Abdul Majid Abdul Razak Alaru, and the medical tips, and also the technological tips that has been done. So we thank Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we thank the lecturer, those that are giving the tips, the moderator for today's program, the anchor, and everybody that has participated in one way or the other. A special thanks also to the welfare, chairman of the welfare and his committee, that's for Sumega, and the committee on the other side has made its partnership work, led by Dr. KK. We pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless each and every one of us as we support the cause of Islam. May Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to support us in all our endeavor. I say to everybody, Jazakumullahu khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept it from us as an act of ibadah. Thank you.
You're welcome, the President. On that note, I will invite Engineer Kabir Hussein for the closing dua. Engineer Abdul Kabir Hussein.
Assalamu alaikum today. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for he had made this a reality, and we pray Allah put barakah in all we have done today. Allahumma rabbana la tuzigh qulubana ba'da idh hadaytana wa hab lana min ladunka rahmatan innaka antal wahhab wa tub alayna ya maulana innaka antat tawwabur rahim. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun